acoustic analysis. Having introduced you to the very basic and non-technical reading of spectrogram, now let me just tell you something more about the acoustic analysis. Because acoustically, we are required to analyze speech sounds, and we are most of the time busy with the interpretation of those correlates and those, physical features which are visible on a spectrogram, and then interpret them into our discussion on speech sounds, right? So what we are doing is basically we are talking about the acoustic configurations of speech sounds, and in terms of numbers, basically, like in terms of the values of formants, right, or the values of harmonics, the fundamental frequency, and those durations, basically. The actual frequencies of formants, that's an important aspect of the acoustic analysis, right? Because we are required to plot at times the vowels on the basis of their formants. First two formants are really important because we would be, just interpreting the F1 in terms of the height of vowels, and then we would also be talking about the F2 value of a vowel, because that would tell us something about the frontness of the vowel, that it is uttered from how frontal portion of the mouth cavity, right? So that's an important aspect of the acoustic features. And we would be also talking about some graphs, like when those formants are taken, right? Like on the basis of first three formants, we would be, not only interpreting a vowel sound, but we would also be comparing them, that how it is working in a specific context, and what are those influencing contextual sounds, right? So we would also see the correlation between such features of sounds, right? In this discussion, within this session particularly, we would be talking about the 8 vowels of American English, right? And we would be talking about the first 3 formants of those 8 sounds, right? And those 8 sounds are uttered in a very uniform, very specific context. The words which are used here, and I've taken this, graph from your textbook written by Leda Fogart and Johnson, and you can also go and see the discussion which is done there by the authors in order to just carry out with the basic level of the acoustic analysis. So that's an important point. And the selection of words which they have done for the sake of recording for these words, that's also a very technically selected, a selection of words, because they have taken these heat, hit, head, hat, heart, heart, hood, and then hood. So you see that in every word, the start is with a her sound, the fricative her, voiceless sound, and then the end sound in every word is the, which is a stop, right? So that's a very a fine selection for the recording of these sounds, and the uniformity is also very important in order to compare vowels and their features, because the starting consonant is similar for all these 8 vowels, and then also the ending sound is similar. So that is just to minimize the influence of the contextual sounds, because they are taking place in a very uniform context, right? So let me just take you to the table, that how these 8 vowels are spoken by the typical American speaker, right? And you see that for the E sound, if I just zoom in for you, right? So in terms of zooming it in, you see that the F1 is 280, okay? And then the F2 is 2250, right? And there is quite a gap between the 2 values. And F3 is 2890, right? Similarly, the A, which is shorter, and a little bit, down. You see 280 is showing us that it's higher than the A, because the more you come down, the more the value of F1 would be increased, right? So this is in just inverse relationship, because the lower is the F1 frequency value, then the higher the vowel is, right? So that's an important correlate, and you must be able to think about it, okay? That's why it is so, right? Then the F2 value is for A sound is 1920 and F3 is 2560. For this course, you must be just keeping in mind that what are these values, because we may be referring to them in acoustic discussion again and again. And this is the had, the A sound, A, right? So that's 550 F1, 1770 F2, and 2490 F3. And then A, the A, like the had, so the A sound, 690 F1, 1660 F2, and 2490 F3. And here is the A sound, right? 710 F1 and 1100 F2. You see very little difference, you see? And then 2540 F3 for this half-rounded vowel, the hard, so O, this is 590. 590 is F1, 880 F2, 2540 F3. And for our second last sound, which is O, 450 is, the F1, 1030 F2, 2380 F3. And for our the high bake vowel, U, and you can compare that how higher it is, U from O, right? 310 is the F1 value, 870 is F2, and 2250 is F3, right? So that's the point, and we would be, continuing with this discussion. But it was just your introduction to the first three, formats, and that how comparative analysis is required in order to discuss the vowel sounds of English. So that was your introduction to them.